Hi, I'm Bob Roth, Managing Partner and Co-founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. Since 1994, we've been helping older adults in the Phoenix community age gracefully and safely in the place they call home. Since 2014, I've been bringing you Health Futures, Taking Stock in You, a show dedicated to helping you live a longer, healthier, and happier life. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And enjoy the show. Welcome back to Health Futures, and I'm excited about our guests here today. I have a father and a son here in the studio with me, and how appropriate it is. It's just a couple days past Father's Day. So without further ado, I want to introduce our audience to Ben Lytle, who has actually been on Health Futures before. Yep. Ben, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the guy in the middle is your son, Hugh Lytle. And
Absolutely.
Hugh, this is the first time we're having you here on Health Futures. Yep. And it's really special having a father and son. For me, I've been on the show here with my dad before, but I've never had a father and son other than me and my father. So I'm excited about having both of you here in the studio with me. Yeah. So, before we really get things started here, I really would love for our guests here to kind of really give us a little bit about their background. Ben's been a guest here before, but, for those that have not seen our show or heard our show, Ben, could you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, well, it's it's a long career, so I'll try to keep this as short as I possibly can. So I began in tech when I was still in high school, and that was back when computers were steam powered. So, but I went on and that career in tech paid my way into being into management very young, and also financed the first part of my career. So I rose up in IT over a period of time. So the years that I spent in IT ultimately ended up with me being the chief information officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Indiana. I went to law school at night, and that then led to me becoming chief operating officer of Blue Cross and ultimately its CEO, which led me to building some companies that we'll talk about. One thing I want to make sure, though, that I mention is I've had two avocations. So on the one hand, you can see this tech guy rising up and then becoming an insurance executive, but I've had two avocations that are as important as my career. One is as a futurist. I became fascinated in high school always been an avid reader, with science fiction, and then later with futurists and what futurists did, which used analytics instead of fiction to define what they think the future is going to be. And the other was as on human potential. I got introduced in college to the whole concept of human potential and what could that be. And so those two things have paralleled my career. So then I'll go back to my career now. So I go on from being an IT guy to becoming suddenly the number 2 guy in Blue Cross Blue Shield of Indiana, and then in 5 years later was designated to succeed the CEO when he retired in 2 years. I asked the board for those 2 years to come up with a strategic plan for that company, because it was challenged, because it was in Indiana, which was a Rust Belt state at the time. We depended on headquartered companies, so there were a lot of challenges. So, and I told them this is going to be a big plan. I have no interest in an incremental plan, and I came back with a plan to build 2 companies, which in parallel. One was going to be a downstream public company at a point when we were a mutual insurance company. The other was to try to merge Blue Cross companies to build something that would be big enough to compete with the companies that were demutualizing, like Aetna and Cigna, and the one big public company we already had, United Healthcare, so we could compete with them. So over the next 11 years, I did that. And so we built a very successful insurance broker called Accordia that ended up being the 4th largest in the world. And then I built Anthem, which went on to become Anthem, and it's now Elevance, which is one of the 50 largest companies in the United States. Kind of amazing, $100 billion.
Wow.
And along the way, did a lot of spinoffs that also created billions in market value. So, and then decided that I wanted to come to Arizona, and because I loved Arizona, I'd fallen in love with it, and just really loved Arizona. And Hugh was already back out here. He had spent some years in Indiana, but he was back out here, and I wanted to come and work with Hugh to build companies in Arizona. And help him build his career, and the same thing for my son Larry. So that was it, and we've been out here for 26 years, and we built 3 very successful companies in the Valley. And watched this guy become an amazing entrepreneur and business builder. So it's been a great joy for me.
Well, thank you, Ben, for giving our listeners and our viewers a little bit of your background. But you really set the table to unpack a few things with Hugh, and certainly Hugh was here in Arizona, if I recall correctly, because he went to school here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Hugh, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. I grew up in Indiana. Obviously, that's where Anthem's headquarters were, and had a great childhood there. Very successful in high school football there. Which allowed me to have a ton of great friends, and still lifelong friends to this day. But then moved out to Arizona to take my moonshot at playing for Arizona State as a QB, and made the team and played for just a little bit till I got hurt, and then that was it. But it was it got me to the state, it had me fall in love with the state, and met my wife here. I've been married for 27 years now. Wow. Met her about 30 years ago, and I've raised 3 children right here in Arizona, and they are all off and launching their careers. And business-wise, worked with my father, which was the joy of my life, in 2 companies, Axia Health Management and Univita Health, and then launched my own with his guidance, of course, and mentorship, called Equality Health, which was more of a local build. It was a bootstrap startup. It was a different approach than we had done in the past, and learned a lot as an entrepreneur in that process, but was able to scale that large. Now we're in 5 states and manage about 800,000 Medicaid lives across the country. Before I decided to, we'll talk a little about this, I think, probably later, sure. But before I decided to take a shot at trying to help our state in a different form of leadership through running for public office as governor.
Well, thank you both. And thank you both for really framing our podcast here today. And, Ben, I really want to talk to you about, the fact that you have built a successful family, and it originates from someone and somewhere. And I guess, my question is where did this all begin?
Well, it really began with watching my father, and my mother. My father was a surprisingly inventive and in many ways ahead of his time. He overcame incredible things that are hard to imagine. He lost his eye at 9 years old in baseball, so he only had one eye. He lost his father a year later in the Great Flu epidemic, and so then he had a complete. And then there were several years there that was just him and his mother and his sister, but then fortunately she married a man who had she had 2 children, he had 4. They got together, and then they had another 5 together. So he had a lot of, stepbrothers and sisters, and so he grew up after that. Well, but then he had, another tragedy. Very young guy, and he was married by then, married very young, and his wife died in childbirth with one of 2 twins, and so here he's got this little baby now, and he has this other challenge. Fortunately, met my mother, and they raised her as if she were one of their own. Well, anyway, he was just that kind of guy. But what they did they didn't have money to help us. They were ranchers, and my dad was a part-time carpenter, later became a full-time carpenter, and then became a home builder, and that's how he ended his career. But they were always encouraging. They always told all of us, you kids are smart, you work hard, you can do anything you want to do. And so many parents don't do that. Right. And it's such a simple thing. So we were inspired to do what we did. And the product of that was, here's this, family with basically nothing, and they couldn't even afford to, help us with going to college. They didn't have that kind of money. But yet they produced 2 multimillionaire entrepreneurs, me and my brother, 2 out of a family of 4. Now, what does that tell you? Pretty amazing. Yeah. So that was where it began.
And just, the stuff that they went through, and they just, the fact that, it kind of shaped your lives as leaders.
It does.
And, I didn't realize you had a successful brother as well.
Yeah. So very successful.
Is he in Texas?
Yeah, he's in Texas.
He stayed.
Built his own business, started again with nothing, and he built his own business, out of his pocket. So, and it was a very successful business there in town.
Well, that kind of sets the tone for Hugh.
Yeah.
And, Hugh, how has being a family of self-made entrepreneurs impacted or shaped what you wanted to do and believe you could achieve?
Well, let's put it this way. They set the bar so high that I really believed anything was possible. There was never a defeated attitude in the household I grew up in. And I got to tell you, just talking about my Uncle Hubert, his brother Hubert, when I was young, it used to make my heart beam with pride when I get off the exit in Greenville, Texas, driving out from Dallas, about 50 miles outside of Dallas. And we'd pull off the interstate, and there's Lytle Rentals, right there off the interstate, right in front of the mall. It was this big equipment rental place. And, he did a great job. He's produced children that are very successful as well, and have a lot of respect for what he's done. And, in my household, obviously, my father's only 18 years older than me. So that's interesting, right?
That is interesting.
And I became really an observer of him, just how his behaviors, how he did things. And if you know Ben, he is a frenetic thinker. When he gets on something, he is a dog on a bone, and it taught me about being strategic is great, but you got to be able to get deep too. Mm-hmm. And so that combined with, I had a high school football program that was unique and ahead of its time, and had an amazing coach who's a Hall of Fame coach now, who also taught me a lot about discipline. And so it was a combination of discipline, seeing what was possible, that never ever put something in my head of there's a limitation, if you will. I mean, you've had a successful father, so you probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a fortunate situation to be in, but because we were so young in age, I was just enamored with his life and how he did things, and watched how he did things, and that paid off for me over the long run.
Well, I'm kind of envious of both of you, because I never did get a chance to work with my dad, and the fact that you got a chance to do that is really, really special. Ben, you must be really proud of Hugh and Larry, too. Right. We haven't really talked about Larry. Both are successful entrepreneurs.
Right.
And they're respected in our community and get involved in the community. I mean, it's one thing to, run a business like you have and Larry has, but volunteering and helping the community at large is really, really big. And, what do you attribute that to, Ben?
Well, the one thing about it is I mentioned my avocation, of human potential and stuff. So one of the people that was somebody that I studied a lot was Carl Jung, and his basic beliefs about human potential and how it comes out. And he has this concept which is now pretty well established, and it's called the constant you. And it basically, the idea is the constant you, whoever you are. Yeah. So
I knew what you said.
Yeah. So it's Hugh or you. Yeah. So both. Yeah. So basically, it says who you are. If you'll get somebody that knew you as a child.
Yeah.
they'll know a lot about who you are, because there's some parts of that just don't change. And my favorite story about Hugh is, and how nothing stopped him, was he was 3 years old. And he told me one day, Daddy, I need a bigger tricycle. And so he had this normal little sized tricycle. And I said, well, why, Hugh? And he said, well, I want to ride with those kids. Well, those kids were on bicycles. Now, they were smaller bicycles. These were kids 7 and 8 years old.
Right.
But he's 3 years old. And I go, well, Hugh, I don't think you can keep on. Yeah, I can, Daddy. I said, okay. So I go down and I buy him a bigger tricycle. And those kids would take off, and he would just pedal like crazy, and he'd keep up with them pretty good. And I watched, and over the next few months, they kind of treated him as a peer, so that's who he is. That hasn't changed. He's not afraid. He'll figure out how to use that tricycle to keep up with somebody on a bicycle. That's who he is.
Do you remember that?
No, I guess I don't remember that, but it sounds familiar.
and where do you think that confidence and drive comes from?
I think there's, like Ben said, there's something just in the wiring. I think in the Lytle blood that is, focused on achievement. I got asked this question once in a executive coaching. So when I was a first-time CEO, I needed coaching. There's a lot to learn, especially in private equity. And in my executive coaching, they said, what's your life's great question? And I'm going, okay, life's great question. It should. Some people, it's like, did my mom ever love me? That kind of thing. Mine, I couldn't come up with anything other than what really drove me every day, which was, have I improved from before? Am I getting better? Am I trending upward? And I thought that was an odd thing to say at the time. I was like, it sounds really self-promoting. I go, but that's what drives me. I wake up, I'm like, am I getting better? I mean, I don't know what, as a quarterback, I would think about who is my competition when I go off to play somewhere. What are they doing today? And am I doing more than they're doing, right? And that's always been in my psyche. And so the irony was, he said, well, do you think you're successful right now? And I said, oh, no, but someday I will. He's like, yeah, that's the problem with that. So, being in the moment, you got to be able to be in the moment too. So I've learned how to bridle that a little bit. But yeah, I'm definitely the little engine that could. I mean, I feel like there's nothing I cannot do.
Excuse me.
No, please.
No,
go ahead.
one of the things that, usually you would think, well, the son quotes the father, but I have so many Hugh quotes. One of the things he said to me that struck me one time that was so much him, and it was brilliant also, about life and how you look at it. He said to me, Dad, I hate playing defense. He's talking about life here, not football. He said, I hate playing defense. I love being on offense. And I thought, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. How many people would learn from that very simple principle of always be on offense, be going forward no matter what you're doing?
I think, for me personally, having played football and other sports, I think so much of that translates to the real world, the business world.
Absolutely.
Because what we learned on the gridiron is what we do in practice every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, we practice, we study tendencies. We want to be on offense. We want to make sure that we're not backpedaling and on defense, but we want to be able to kind of be forward-thinking, to kind of predict what may happen and be prepared for that.
It's the ultimate collaboration. I mean, 11 people doing the same thing at the same time to the best of their ability at the highest level of execution, and you're going to be successful if you do that. Very hard to put that together with other people.
And if one person isn't doing their assignment, the whole thing is off.
The whole thing is off. Right. I tell you, that's one of the hardest transitions I ever had to make to business. Was I would hang on to people too long before I let go of them.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I know that feeling.
In football, just like the military in football, you've got a unit. You're only as good as your weakest person. Right. So our job was to get that weakest person to play their best. I'm engineered that way. But I've had to learn as a CEO, sometimes you also have to cut people loose and let them find their better path. Their path maybe doesn't belong on that football field or in that position. And so that's the learning of life, right, at the end of the day. But I agree with you 100%. So much that I've carried both from leadership from the football field to the boardroom to now as I think about the state, comes from that same very kernel.
I love it.
Yeah.
So Ben, you've had an extraordinary career in conceiving and founding Anthem, which became one of the 50 largest companies in the U.S. and spin-off companies, as you shared before, creating additional billions in shareholder value. You chose to leave this role as CEO. If I remember correctly, at 52 years old?
Yep.
You decided to leave and come to Arizona. Why did you leave? And why Arizona?
Well, first of all, I had studied really. I'd come out here for years. The Blue Cross Blue Shield Association had a meeting here every February. And the weather in Indiana is really bad in February. And I would come up here and I'd run along the canal and I'd go, wow, this is amazing. And then Hugh, of course, going to school out here, I was out here a lot. And I fell in love with it. Now, before I made that final decision, I really considered other places, but not very long. I loved it. And Hugh was already out here. But you know, a big part of it was I had been thinking about this for a long time, and there were many things I wanted to do in this other second part of my life where my health was still good and everything, and that just are not possible when you're running a big public company. It's just not. It's so demanding. And one of them was I wanted to work with Hugh and Larry to support them in whatever they wanted to do, and my daughter, and I also thought that I wanted to achieve my peak fitness, physical fitness, and keep it there. I wanted to be as fit as I possibly could throughout the rest of my life. That at least what I could do. I also had one grandchild already. And I knew I was getting ready to have a passel of them. And so I wanted to be there at their birth. I wanted them to be around them. And I didn't want them to be somebody they saw once or twice a year. And that's what happens when you're the demands of running a public company. And I wanted to travel the world, and not travel the world in the traditional run over and do it a few days at a time, but I wanted to rent property there and stay there a month or two in the most beautiful places in the world, the biggest, most famous cities, and I wanted, all of those were things that I wanted to do, and so it was really a very easy decision for me. It was very hard for people to understand, and they kept throwing money on the table, and they didn't understand. I didn't want too much money. Now that's a very strange thing.
It is a strange
thing. But I did not want too much money. Because if you're trying to raise a family and train them to be resilient, be on their own, do these things on their own, you got to be careful not to ruin them. And people need need the dignity of self-achievement. No, something Dad did for me. And they need the enlightenment that comes from self-discovery. Those two things everybody in the world's got to have. And the more money you've got, the harder that gets. So I just said, I've got all the money I need. I don't want a plane. I don't want a boat. I can rent them if I want them. I don't want all that stuff. And this is the life I want. I can finance it, and I'm going to go do it. And I would say it's absolutely the best decision I ever made in my life. The best.
Well, from an outsider standpoint, I would agree. And you are in incredibly fit shape. And that was one of the things you wanted to do, besides obviously be with your family.
Right.
So, Ben, you kind of had a low profile here in Arizona. And when you were in Indiana, you had a higher profile. You were, in the magazines and the newspaper and in the industry.
Right.
But you kept a low profile here, and then you published a Potentialist book series. And that began a new career for you as an author, as a futurist, and a speaker. What was that low, or should I say, was that low profile intentional?
Yeah, it was, because, really I wanted, in Arizona, I wanted my sons to be the Lytles, not me. I'd had all the high profile that I ever wanted, and had it not been for this belief that what I was writing in the Potentialist was crucial for how do we adapt to this new world we're going in, this new reality, I would have kept a very low profile. But I wanted to make sure that the Lytles here were my sons. It was their time, and this was going to be their place, and it has been. And I'm still pretty much known as Hugh's dad and Larry's dad, and that's fine with me.
Well, you were always known as me as Larry's dad. And,
that's
and
right.
I knew
that's
about
right.
you, but
that's
I'm
right.
just getting to know him now.
Yeah. So it was intentional, and I think it worked very well.
Speaking of the potentialists, you put together, I think it's 3 books, and you do a lot of public speaking. Have you been surprised at the reception you're getting on this?
Yeah, I was. I mean, to be honest with you, when I first walked into that first speech in 2022, and I was going to talking about the importance of wisdom and reaching our potential in this time when our potential can be greater than ever, and it will be. I didn't know what to expect. A bunch of crusty old business guys, a bunch of finance CFOs, But I was never one time criticized or challenged about it. And since that time, of course, now it's mainstream, because now everybody recognizes the best preparation for a time when we don't know what the jobs are going to be 10 years from now. The best preparation is operating at your potential, becoming wise, making good decisions, and being a good person. That's what everybody now recognizes. So it has become mainstream, and of course I love that as a futurist. Being 5, 6, 7 years in front of everybody else. That's what I do. That's where my credibility comes from.
Well, I will say this: having read the book and seen you speak, you talked about things that are happening now today.
Right.
I mean, you talked about having this AI pal.
Right.
Which, that was like 3-4 years ago, and we all have ChatGPT, and we have Claude, and we have all these other things. We have these AI pals. So, I mean, you've really unlocked and opened the door for me, and I'm sure a lot of others, about reaching the potential.
It's really, it's one of those things where the skill of first, my most important skill of wisdom is asking the right questions. The first most important skill of being good with working with AI is asking the right questions. So it's worked out okay.
So Hugh, you knew Ben had spent a lot of time in Arizona. Were you surprised that he made the move here to Arizona and really joined you in building companies?
Not really. I mean, him and I had always talked about doing something together, and tell a funny story on him. That same kid on the tricycle was coming at him all the time saying, "Hey, I want to start a business. I want to start a business. I want to start a business." He kept saying, "You're not ready. You're not ready." I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm ready." And he's like, "No, you're not ready. You haven't managed people. You haven't managed managers through managing people. You haven't, and I'm going, okay. And, it's actually helped me as I coach entrepreneurs today to help them understand you have to apprentice. You have to learn the trade. Everybody wants to jump and be the next, internet billionaire kind of thing. And so, but what is really interesting is, we had talked about it, and finally one day he said, look, I said, okay, I'm going to go into the healthcare business. I'm going to go into what at the time when I was younger, that sounded like the most boring and worst thing in the world to do what your father does. And I decided, it is a complex industry. It is a constant game of chess that I enjoy. Tons of improvement, tons of opportunity for entrepreneurship. So when we decided to come together and do this, the question was it Arizona or not? And that was absolutely going to be Arizona. But it was actually surprising to me was the rest of my family that moved out here.
Right.
Everybody came, which was wonderful. And we've been able to build, a Lytle family traditions here and across the valley here. But it was, what I feel like at the time, it was something that was really special. The opportunity to work with your father, the opportunity I joke often and say, we're considered now after the successes we've had, the Kennedys of healthcare. I mean, we've got a father-son thing going on, and of course my brother's successful in a different field, but we have been able to build on that just from creating a base here. And one thing that people don't realize is when you build a business in Arizona, you have to fight to keep that business in Arizona, especially if you're one that's scaling nationally. Mm-hmm. because that's just not the location they prefer you to be in. So we've always had to wrestle down our financial partners and say, look, we're headquartered here and we're going to stay here. We might be a Delaware LLC, but we are a Arizona-based corporation, and we're going to do business in Arizona, and very proud of that.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I hear that very often. People, startups, people that are trying to do really good in the community, when they're looking for money, they can't really find money here.
Yeah.
And they have to go elsewhere. And they're asked to move their companies elsewhere.
Completely agree.
Ben, you invested a lot of time with both Larry and with Hugh. And, my question to you is, did you help them finance their ventures, or, did they do that on their own?
No, they did it on their own. I helped position them, and there were, minor little helps here and there. But the fact of the matter is that I helped them position themselves to raise their own money. And again, for the same reason that if I financed it, then it wasn't theirs.
Right.
If they raised the money, it was theirs. And it was so important for me. To me, it was something that drove me, was always make this theirs, so they feel that dignity of self-achievement. This is theirs, their company they built. And that's it. And so Hugh and I worked that out, that the first company I'd have to probably be front to get the money. I didn't want to be, but I'd have to be. And then the second one, he could raise it then, and I'd be, his part-time exec chairman. And the third one, I'm just an advisor, if he even wants me at all.
Well, what's interesting, we talked about it earlier. Larry has a financial advisory firm,
right.
And the first Lytle I met was Larry. I met him about 10 years ago because both of us were on the Banner Health Board.
Okay.
So that's where I met him, and I talked about the Lytles doing not only work in the community, in the businesses that they have, but also serving the community.
Right.
And the work we do at Banner Health on the board is doing just that. And I know Larry served on many board positions, as has Hugh, and really getting into this community.
Right.
I didn't know what the Lytle name was until I met Larry.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, each one of you guys is very different, but you're very much the same.
Yeah.
It really is incredible.
Yeah.
To be friends with all of you.
Yeah, those genes run strong. That's for sure.
They do.
Yeah.
So, Hugh, when did you and Ben start collaborating as entrepreneurs? Was there a deliberate plan for how you would work together?
Yeah, it was this is, again, another thing I kind of counsel entrepreneurs on. One of the benefits of having a father that was as strategic and that had done things as big as he had done them is he knew that you had to spend the time on the research. Everybody wants to go start a business and run out and go get started. Like, let's just go, let's get out there. It's Sun Tzu Art of War. You know what I mean? It is. You have to plan. You need to plan for your success. You're better to delay and research and beat up your thesis and have people who you trust that are knowledgeable in these spaces tell you that your baby's ugly. You have to iterate. And that process I learned from him. I was way too eager. I just wanted it to go. Right. I'm like, let me just get out and sell. I can sell anything. Just let me do it. And he's like, no, we got to know what we're up against. And, I look at that now, and everything we've ever touched, everything I've ever touched has taken a year minimum, usually 2 years of research before we actually hit the market with what we're doing. Now, because of that, we knew we wanted to do things that were transformative. We did not want to go in and just build a widget in healthcare. That was not our interest. And we knew we wanted to do things that drove good for people. So there's a lot of ways to make money in healthcare, different ways that maybe don't touch the patient, are not as, don't feel as good, in terms of being able to support. So population health became our home on that. And then the transformation of that, we really had some principles we lived by. And he really kind of, first one really pushed this one through, which is you just don't look for trends. In healthcare, people look for trends. They go, okay, this new telemedicine's going. I want to go build a telemedicine company, or I think it's coming. We look for convergence of trends, multiple things coming together at a single point. That's the lightning rod that you're going after. And a lot of times that's not intuitive. And then we also knew that the other requirement is it had to create systemic change. This had to be something that was done differently than we'd done it before. Not a slight modification, done different. And if you look at the 3 businesses we built, all of them were transformational in how we went about it. So planning to work together, yes. How we went about it was, really driven by his experience and our ability to come. And now I get to coach others on that very same process. That's not for every entrepreneur, but it's certainly the kind of thing that, the Lytle brand stands for and what we do.
Yeah.
100%. And, being an entrepreneur, you're a risk taker. And certainly you both realized you were taking a risk working together. Because sometimes father and son business dealings don't end well. Yeah. What do you? I know that Hugh talked a little bit about it. What do you attribute to that success?
Well, his character, and I'll tell you, I could tell you a lot of great stories, but I'll tell you this story was because it was really transformative. We had been in our 2 years of research. We had a deal in hand to found the prevention and wellness company that we had, and and we knew it was going to be really good because we had bought some. We were positioned to buy several big companies, and I got cold feet. I was sitting over there at the house, and I said, I called Hugh, and I said, Hugh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to risk our relationship working together. It's going to be so hard, for us to do this. And he came over and he said, Dad, I promise you, if you'll do this with me, it will never affect our relationship, ever. Wow. And it didn't. I said, okay, I'll take your word. And so we went ahead and had, of course, crazy success with it. And but he would do things like, we'd have a rough day at work, maybe we were arguing about something, and he always called me Ben at work. He didn't call me Dad, ever. He always called me Ben. And then we would go home. We'd be at a family event. He'd walk up, put his arm around me. Hi, Pop. See what I'm saying? He made that transition, and he always lived up to it. The character it took for that. So when I attribute, how did we not have difficulties and destructive things as father and son, and actually loved working together, was really him, his character.
Well, and it's hard when you guys work together to not bring it home.
Oh, yeah.
And the secret to success was just really turning it off when you got home and when you were together as a family.
I think there's a lot of, I can appreciate now being a father with a son who's older, how, and my daughters, I would say the same, on how there's things that hurt your heart. Like we've had some tough stuff we had to deal with at times with having, New York private equity type ownership. They're financial engineers, and there are certain ways they do business that aren't always friendly to entrepreneurs. And so that leads to tough discussions. Ben's chairman, I'm CEO. He's my boss,
right,
at the end of the day. And so those kind of discussions, to be able to have those, I'm sure for him, heavy in heart and difficult to have to take on. But me having respect for the fact he has to have those kind of difficult conversations, but there is a hierarchical relationship on that, is something to be able to do something like that and then to turn around and go to a family event and be normal and be as if nothing ever happened. And we could really turn the switch between family and work in a way that, but the benefit was we agreed on 95%.
Yeah, that's the truth. Most of the time we were agreeing.
We weren't like usually at odds.
No, it was rare
on things. Yeah. But not saying we don't have dinner conversations at times that are complex when it comes to healthcare. But overall, though, it just worked. It couldn't be any better. So
yeah.
So Ben, what did you find most difficult being in an advisory role?
Well, as an advisor, and this is now shifting. This is now, I'm not chairman of the board. I'm not CEO. He's not chief operating officer. I'm not the executive chairman. I'm now simply an advisor. And as an advisor, first of all, the role changes, at least in my mind. He's the boss now. He's the guy whose tail is on the line. And so I think of myself as me working for him. And so first of all, I have to think, okay, does he need this advice? Is it really that important? And if it is, when's the right time to offer it? Because you have to, or at least I think particularly now, both in everything he's doing, and when he was building Equality Health, and now when he's running for governor, this is his tail that's on the line, not mine. And so I need to be really careful of when I offer advice and in what way, because I could just be distracting him from something because I'm not in it every day. So that's one of the things that I think is really hard. And as a parent, you run into the same thing. As a parent, you with his kids, you run into a situation, okay, do I let them figure this out on their own, or do I actually give them some advice? It's just it's the same thing. So that's the way it works. So
no, and it's hard.
It's very hard,
especially since you've been that guy,
right?
And now you need to kind of let go. And
absolutely,
you've molded this gentleman here, who now is running for governor as an independent.
Yeah,
it was a major decision, and I want to thank you personally for stepping up, Hugh. I really appreciate that. I do want to know how did that come about, and how was Ben involved in that final decision? And were you surprised at his reaction?
Yeah, so I got a call from a gentleman named Paul Johnson, former mayor Paul Johnson.
I've had him on the show.
Yeah, I'm sure you know
Paul. Paul's a great guy.
Paul, great guy. I thought I was meeting with him about Redirect Health because he has a healthcare company.
Yeah.
And he brought a couple of gentlemen with him, and he said, I don't want to talk about healthcare. I know you're an independent, and I'd like to ask if you'd be willing to run as independent for governor. And this little party we've commandeered called No Labels Arizona. And he took me through the logic of, fair ballot access, that 5,000 signatures Republican, 5,000 Democrat, 45,000 if you're an independent. So some of the things they put in place to keep independents out. And so he took me through that, and I went through a kind of cathartic process, as you might imagine, on would this make sense to do at this stage in my life? And so I had moved to executive chairman of the company I founded, Equality Health, after 10 years, and was thinking about actually launching potentially another business in the end-of-life space that you and I have talked about. This came about, and I said I need to give this some gravity because it's really it's the true call to public service. It's a call to service that I think any of us in the healthcare industry, people that serve people, particularly in a highly regulated industry like healthcare, we see the challenges that exist with the government. We see ways we can improve, and we're change makers. We're disruptors. That's the DNA of the Lytle family. So I said, I'm going to give this some thought, but I need to talk to this guy first. As you would imagine. And Ben is, when I met with him, he was like, whoa, okay, and took it in. Like all fathers, no different than if my son came to me, immediately thought of the risk, right? I mean, you're always trying to protect your kids,
sure.
And so immediately the risk, which of course I thought through as well. But it wasn't very long after that when he saw that I was committed, and that he was like, well, you'd be the best governor we ever had. There's no doubt in my mind that you are not the best guy for the job. So he then went to, okay, how do I help? And so we had a really long discussion around his views on what it would take as an independent, and how he could be helpful in getting that done. And I still come to him today for questions and support.
So you went to Ben, and I'm sure you went to Barbara too.
Yeah.
So tell me about that discussion, because
Barbara was a tricky one because I'd already been working on this
I was a piece of cake.
Yeah. I kind of semi-retired for a couple months, and I don't think she was having a lot of that. But then I started on this next, last 2 years of life kind of approach to business, and And so I was starting to pull a team together and getting that moving. And she saw the old me coming back and the time committed to that and energy. And then when I said, hey, I'm going to be layering another thing here I need to talk about, it was a stall for a minute. But, she's an entrepreneur's wife, and they just, they roll with it. They've got calluses. And she's my number one fan. And so she's like, you know what, same thing. You'd be amazing. I know in my heart you would be the right guy. I know how dangerous you are when you have right on your side. And in this case, you do have right on your side. She said, I'm behind you. Go for it. And just keep me out of the public light if you can. So said not a lot of, we'll have to see how that goes. But and she was great.
And the kids, same?
Kids were, kids grew up in a different time. So kids were immediately worried about political violence, right? Mm-hmm. They saw Charlie Kirk. They've seen the things that have gone on, the vile insults, the hatred that exists, the social media algorithms that divide us. And they're like, geez, Dad, you're putting yourself in the middle of that. And I said, but where am I putting myself? And they said, yeah, you're putting yourself in the right place. You're not either one of those. You are fighting for, public discourse, bipartisanship, doing the right thing, common sense. That's fair to us. That we're supportive.
And I see, obviously the convergence, if you would, of what you did with Equality Health and serving underserved communities and the work that you're doing here as a governor or running for governor. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I like to say I'm a man of the people, but I like being in a T-shirt and being in the middle of the crowd. Like, I want to be engaged. When I built Equality, I was engaged. I handed out turkeys. I was in the living rooms hearing families talk about their healthcare costs and challenges and being able to afford healthcare, and then more importantly, in the world I was in, the cultural relevance, like the inability to understand, predisposition to illness, other challenges that come from being a minority or an immigrant population. And so those things led to the same thing I think as governor. I think as a governor, what you'd see different from me that you don't see anymore is I'm whipping the boat. I'm going to be all over the place. I just heard the other day we haven't had a governor attend one single Board of Regents meeting. Our three biggest universities, right? Wow. They're invited, always. Not one attend, but I would be sitting in those meetings, okay? I want to know what is going on in my state, and I want to be accessible. I've got based on my father's AI business, I've been able to create a digital twin. We're launching here in the next couple of weeks. You can talk to me 24/7. You can ask me. I want to be accessible. And so that combined with a passion for knowing that Arizona is just no different than I felt like in healthcare. We were at a place where, in Medicaid in particular, two-tier healthcare system, it can go one way or the other, okay? And same thing in where we're at in Arizona. We have the greatest opportunity to actually be a global economic leader on this new knowledge economy that we can build.
That's true.
We've got a great start on that. Or we miss it, and these companies go elsewhere, okay? That's tax base, that's everything. So what I'm running on is improve our healthcare and make sure that people have affordable healthcare and accessible healthcare, to have an economy that works for everyone, to ensure that our students are getting the best. Our students have been long overlooked in our education system. We've got to come up with a new approach. So focusing on that. And then one thing that isn't talked about that is exactly what is going to, part of that potential to hold us back is infrastructure. So we've had tax reductions, which are great on one hand. On the other hand, we don't have the money to support our growth. And it's like any business. You have to invest. You have a J curve. You lose money before you make money, okay? We are in a situation where our roads are crumbling, our infrastructure's not able to keep up with the 100,000 a year people that we got, let alone when you start bringing in TSMCs and importing people. We've got to find ways to invest in our infrastructure to open up more channels of growth and make Arizona the greatest place in the country to live.
Bob, one thing I think it's important to say, one thing that is in our DNA, mine, Hugh's, Larry's, all of the children, is we are not elitists. We are not elitists. We are, you said, man, the people. That's, I don't mean, we don't mean that in a way that's insincere. It's in our wiring. We like to go and work with people and find out what they want, find out what they need, and find a way to deliver it. Because I'm 100% behind you. You don't change in a time as fast as the world is changing, and with the tools we've now got, like really powerful large language models, among other things, and robotics are coming right behind. We can do big things. We can do transformative things. There's no reason why every person in the United States can't have the path I had from nothing and that we've had as a family. There's no reason that we can't do that. And I know Hugh has a passion for it. I have a passion for it. Larry has a passion for it. And that's really important, because that sets the stage for what we want to do. We want it to be significant, and we want it to be something that creates more opportunity for everybody.
As you know, as you do it in your career, a life well lived is one where you're helping others. That's the greatest value. Business success, yeah, that's great. But what's greater is knowing what you've done for people. And that is the ultimate calling to public service.
Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about healthcare, and you and I have had several meetings talking about healthcare. And, you know, what you build at Equality Health is nothing short of phenomenal.
Amazing.
Because you talk about the underserved communities. And I had... forget her last name, Lisa.
Oh, Stevens Anderson.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had Lisa on the podcast.
Oh, wow.
And she shared a fact with me, and you can maybe elaborate on this, that the mortality rate of in Arizonans that live in South Phoenix and in more impoverished areas versus North Phoenix and Scottsdale and Paradise Valley, it's 17 years.
14 years, yeah.
14 years.
14 years. Yeah.
14 years.
14-year age discrepancy between, longevity and life,
right,
just based on where you're born and where you live. And that's for factors you well know, social determinants of health, which make up, particularly in low income and poverty-stricken areas, that make up 2/3 of the healthcare cost. It's not really that much about physical health. It's about social health. It's about mental health.
100%.
And these resources are thin at best. And it's part of the thing I would do as governor is I would want to really dig into our Medicaid program. Part of having lower healthcare costs is a thriving Medicaid program. We have cut it to bare bones, as you know, more coming. That's going to create more uncompensated care that's going to end up in our emergency rooms. They're going to be practicing primary care, which is not the function of an emergency room. So we've got what I would consider to be a healthcare crisis actually happening under our feet, as you know, not caregiver workforce alone, licensing. We don't have enough people to take care of the people that are aging, the boomers that are aging into old age and 80 plus. And what are we going to do? It's going to hit the general fund at some point. It's going to hit our tax base. So we have to find a way today. And listen, if you talk about a place that you can create efficiency, it's in Medicaid. There's a lot of hardworking, well-intended people there, but we need some efficiency in that organization to get us to the next level. And if we can improve in Medicaid and we can improve our uninsured, then we also help commercial rates come down by the very nature of supporting people that are on Medicaid.
And Bob, you know this from the conversations that we've had, and I think I mentioned on this show. Unfortunately, people look at AI and they've been, and unfortunately the media has played boogeyman. It is not the boogeyman, it's the Calvary. Because the only way we can get multipliers of productivity in the provider side is through AI. We can't do it any other way. So we have to be able to have one doctor multiplied to 10, 15, or 20. And AI can do that, and it's the only thing that can get us there. And so just like you said, we have to go in and figure out how are we going to serve all these people. And we can't do it. We don't have the people. So we got to figure out how to use the technology we have to do it.
And we're
close.
And
we're
where
close.
AI is super powerful is in this verticalization, let's call it, of segments. The ability to augment and support with knowledge, information, to be able to help with care coordination, to be able to share information across multiple different fragmented platforms so that you can have a singular experience as a patient and as a caregiver, is where we got to get to. And AI is a major way to get us there in a fast way. We could have never done with just traditional databases and exchanges. So, so that part is exciting. We still have some other challenges, as you know, with Arizona and healthcare. Rural health is. We needed about $1 billion. We got about
167 or something.
Million.
Yeah, that's all we got in that transformational grant.
We have to do a lot with a little. So mobile health and telemedicine and these things will become really important in the future, as well as workforce, including. And the other area we've got to address behavioral health. You mentioned equality health. Another important fact about equality is that our number 2 comorbidity was mental health. So it is a huge cost driver, and it is reimbursed at a woeful rate relative to its contribution to total cost of care. And that's something that I believe needs to be looked at, and I would look at right away as a governor. So,
well, I appreciate that, and I'm so glad you brought up mental health, because we, for the population of our state, we have the fewest amount of beds available, and constantly that behavioral health sector is constantly getting cut by the state, and we have people that are organizations that are closing, not-for-profits that are closing because they can't sustain themselves.
Well, and in your world, how many people in skilled nursing facilities are on Medicaid, right? Huge.
Unbelievable.
60-70% probably of them. So,
and nobody wants to be in skilled. They want to be in assisted living. And,
exactly.
And the assisted living has its own fair share of problems.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I think the thing that I really liked what you did with the quality health, and Lisa talked about this on the show, is that, all of us need to feel like we're accountable. And what you did with the staff that you had out there in the field, maybe you can explain it a little bit better, but AI is going to help a lot. And I loved what I learned 3 or 4 years ago about having an AI pal. And maybe AI pals can really help us be accountable.
Yeah.
But accountability is everything. And teaching and showing people how to live their best life is another thing.
Yeah, the number one transformational aspect of equality health was we are to this day the one of the only and we're the first to be a scaled Medicaid risk provider, meaning that we did what's called value-based care. So we, instead of getting paid on a fee-for-service basis, you got paid for did the patient get better or not, okay? And if you did it, so let's say it cost $100 and you do it, you settle on 95, so that it lowers the cost for the insurer, okay? But if you do it for 90, then you get the provider gets a piece of that savings, right? So there's motivation and accountability to say, I can control my financial destiny as a provider by ensuring that this patient achieves the right outcome. So guess what's motivating? Motivation is I'm going to make sure that care is coordinated. I'm going to make sure that they follow up. I want to make sure they don't return back to the emergency room again, because I'm now accountable for the financial performance as well as the clinical performance, and that changes the entire system. And so today, people don't realize in the $4.5 trillion healthcare system we have a half to 75% of contracts are in value-based today. We just have been slower to move that to what they call downside risk, to where where you're sharing with the insurer between savings and so that's been a slower brew, but we're getting there. But that's the same thing when you look at so if you really want to lower healthcare costs, you have to move to more accountable structures, or it's just we're going to continue to ride that cost inflation at the same time wages are going down, and it becomes a cliff we're going to run off of.
Yeah, and it is a crisis right now.
It is.
Yeah, people with anybody that's got money and is bailing out. That's why you're suddenly seeing so many concierge doctors, and you're seeing people paying a lot of money to go to a concierge doctor. They're basically bailing out of the current system and saying, I can't make it work for me anymore. And so, and even people who aren't wealthy, who, let's say they're looking at the Accountable Care Act premiums, and they're going, you know what, I think I can do it on my own better. And they're just bailing out. So when people start bailing out of your system, there's a message. So
and
we got to fix it.
Insurers have, with this boomers, Medicare Advantage was a high growth business when they were turning 65, but now they're turning 80. And those boomers, as they turn 80, are very expensive. So they need provider partnerships to lean in at risk, at end of life, and at the last, call it quarter of life. And that's hard to find because it's such a fragmented group of providers that service that senior. And I think there's going to be big changes coming out in the future, but I think we're going to have to go after, if we're going to curtail the risk in this country, we're going to have to go after our highest risk people and be able to manage them.
It's the only way.
In a unique way that provides ultimately savings, because that's where all the expense is really in the highest
80%. 80%.
And we know the math. I mean, we know in the next 2 decades, the 65-year-old population is doubling. And the 85-year-old population is going to nearly quadruple. And the stress that's going to put on the healthcare system is going to be...
We have to be the best in the world at managing those people that are chronically and catastrophically ill. And that's only going to come from focus and specialty companies like, Hugh's considering, where you go after and you manage that segment of it better than anybody else.
And if you, and as governor, one of the things I would do is I would work, I would put together and organize around a group of governors nationally to be able to push for healthcare reform. I think it's particularly when you look at states' contribution to that, and right now the Fed's easing on their participation in it. We're going to have to find some common ground and stand together to say this is what our citizens need. And I'm uniquely qualified to have those conversations.
100%. I mean, when I look at the Lytles, I mean, both of you guys, with your experience in the healthcare vertical, especially your experience with working with Anthem and Blue Cross Blue Shield, is invaluable to where our future is going.
And we both, one thing Hugh and I have been in, we've been in this business of managing chronic disease, every business we built. I mean, that's the first one we built was concentrated. Silver Sneakers was an example, but we had two other very strong businesses that concentrated on how do you change the behaviors or change the conditions that can cause people to improve from wherever their status is, whatever they're at, you can make it better. And that took a lot of convincing of health plans and who were then our customers to believe in it, because they were walking around with too many assumptions about where people's minds were or what they were willing to do. And we proved with those businesses, and Silver Sneakers is a great example, that there are always people who want to be healthy. And if you give them a chance, they'll do it, and it'll be to your benefit. And of course, now it's a standard practice. But when we started it, there wasn't anything like it. And the lady who actually invented it was Mary Swanson, and it was a brilliant, absolutely brilliant idea.
Well, we talk about AI and we talk about technology, and it is incredible today. I'm going through physical therapy. I shared here on the broadcast on Health Futures that I just recently had a herniated disc. All the physical therapy exercises, they get sent to me, and they're all little YouTubes. I don't walk away with papers, so I can actually see how to demonstrate these things. So we think about where we are and where we're going. We're going to empower people to be responsible for their own health.
Absolutely,
and we've got to give them the tools to be able to do that.
Absolutely,
which is exciting.
And we can. We can do that.
Well, and I think having you in that role can really certainly
absolutely
help us. So,
absolutely.
So real quickly about the independent party. I was amazed, and maybe you can give us some data on this. The independent party is a lot larger here than I ever imagined. Do you have a scope of the population in terms of how we're broken up in terms of parties?
Yeah, so what's unusual about Arizona, but not really if you think about us, is we have one of the largest independent populations in the country. Not all part of a party, but primarily just independents or party not chosen. But either way, saying I don't identify with being a singular Republican or Democrat. And it's trending upward. It's going upward. It's not going down. And if you saw the recent Gallup polls, they're showing that 1 out of 2 Americans identify as an independent. Do they vote that way? I don't know, but they certainly say I identify as an independent. And I think what they're saying in a lot of ways is I identify with the better candidate. I think we've gotten to the point where we've had to, in previous elections, choose between the least worst alternative. Like, okay, who does the least harm? I mean, that should not be the way our government runs. So that's why I'm running, is to kind of create another option. Doesn't mean you have to like me, but certainly having more competition is better than less competition. And so we have about 1.5 million of the 4.4 million voters of the 7 million people in the state, that people that vote, particularly in an off-year election or non-presidential year election. Right. And that's about roughly 30% of the population, slightly bigger than the Republican Party by just a hair, and bigger than the Democratic Party. Now, those populations, you have to activate them. And that's the job, is to say, how do we activate them? If I just activated all the independents, I could win the election. So but I'm not counting on that. I basically need to activate. Right now, our numbers are around 65% of the independents, so roughly 1 out of 2 to say, yeah, I identify with this guy, and I'm going to actually go vote. And then I need about 25% crossover vote from there. So that is numbers that are achievable and would put me in a 3-way race as the winner. So that's why it's not an improbability. And I also like to remind people that we haven't had a viable independent candidate for governor in 40 years. So lots changed in 40 years. And the government has got us, we've gotten where anybody who follows politics knows the extremes drive the primaries, which ultimately drive the candidates, which ultimately lead to policies to continue to maintain the support of that base so I can win my next election. I don't fault people for having careers in politics, but I do think it presents a moral hazard on the ability to do the right thing, because you're trying to get to the next job. So do I want to take on a controversial topic? So the elephant in the room in Arizona is education. Do I want to take that on? I don't know if I want to take that on, because that may not make me as electable down the road. As an independent, I say, this is the elephant in the room. Let's figure it out, citizens. We got a problem. We need to fix it. And I think that's refreshing. I think that's what people want to hear.
Well, I want to give you the platform to really share on Health Futures why Arizonans should be voting for Hugh Lytle, an independent, and the first time in 40 years to be running for governor.
You know, it goes a little bit to what I just said. I mean, I would just say that it's time. You know, let's give a different alternative a shot. We've seen what Republican, we've seen what Democrat has done, and right now it's not wowed any of us. We live in the greatest state and the greatest country on the planet, and we have an opportunity to actually lead. Let's not be afraid of that leadership. Okay, let's get out of what I call small ball politics, which is what we do today. We talk about, if you look at the inane bills that go up and down the hill without addressing critical issues we've got in this state, like education, like water, like healthcare. I mean,
like fostering an entrepreneurial environment.
Yeah, exactly. Why would we not want to do that? And it's an interesting point Ben just brought up. I mean, I would create a Department of Entrepreneurship. It would have a high ROI for a government spend program. It would connect our entrepreneurs, give them access, cut red tape, help provide capital, help provide mentorship, help provide support for not only traditional entrepreneurs, but social entrepreneurs, our not-for-profit community, who are thriving but need guidance at times, and innovation and business models for more sustainability, and turnaround specialists, people to help these companies stay afloat when they run into trouble. We've got the talent in the valley, we've got the talent in the state to be able to make that happen. I believe our community colleges are tier 1 in this country. We have got some of the most amazing. State stopped supporting them. State stopped giving them money. They are the future of. Not everybody goes to college.
Right.
It's important to have a college track, don't get me wrong, but our vocational track, our service tracks, our entrepreneurs tracks, our military tracks, everybody should have a pathway to what they want to be able to achieve. These community colleges provide an amazing base for that. And the fact that we've got this national treasure that we've chose to look the other way on, is beyond me as someone who wants to represent our state. So reason why me is I'm disruptive. You're looking at a change maker. You're looking at someone who is ultimately a problem solver. I'm going to listen to both sides of the issue. And as an independent, you don't know what I'm going to do. When I come in and we're talking about this bill, I can go red, I can go blue, I can go extreme red or extreme blue. I can go any direction that makes sense for the bulk of Arizonans, not just for a single party. And I think we're at that place and time where that needs to happen. And I'm just a conduit for citizens to make that happen. This isn't about me. This is about getting to our potential. And just like the potentialist writer here would tell you, we have potential as a state. And
Absolutely.
that is my ultimate goal.
I love it. I really do.
We have really truly have an opportunity to, because where a lot of people are going to go as jobs disappear, change, companies come and go, is they're going to go either as independent contractors or entrepreneurs. We've got people moving into the state who have money, and they're accustomed, because of where they come from. A lot of them are coming from Silicon Valley. They're accustomed to investing in startups, but it's hard to find them today. We don't have that connective tissue, and what Hugh's talking about, we can build that culture here.
The governance structures in the state are what's killing us.
Yeah.
We've got education, workforce, and entrepreneurship governance that is all over the place.
Right.
40, 50 people vying for the same dollars, vying for the same audience.
Right.
We've got to congeal that together. We've got to find a way to pull these groups together, and we do that, we will be the most dynamic. We'll be unbeatable, truly. Right. I mean, you think people are moving in now? Wait till we start doing something like that.
Right.
The divisiveness that happens down at the legislature it's palpable. It really is. And we just ended our session on June 12th, and there were a lot of losers who didn't get funded. And, a lot of the things that you and I have talked about previous to this podcast, but also here today. I mean, healthcare, Medicaid, big losers. I mean, we're really struggling. And it's because of this decisiveness. And, I'm so excited to have you here on the show and really talk about what you're campaigning on and really addressing some of these issues. The educational one is a big one, but let's face it, we're talking about transformation.
Yeah.
What's going on with AI and how people are learning.
Oh, it's going to be totally different.
We need to break down the barriers. We need to recreate. We need to think differently. Right. Because if we do it the same way, we are going to be left behind.
Yeah, Bob, we have semiconductors, as you know. World-class leaders with TSMC, others that will come here, supplier economies that support that, with advanced manufacturing, with our defense tech, with Raytheon and Honeywell and all the organizations there. We have data centers, which I would call responsible data centers, which we're moving to, and I would enforce that. Quantum computing as a component of that. And then what we want to do is we want to be able to bring the AI software businesses here, the real high-wage jobs and the real nerve center. That environment is attractive to them. Mm-hmm. No data latency, no the ability to access chips and power that they need. To support that, we need power and we need workforce. And so that's what the governor's job is to bring in the big elephant hunting, to bring in these AI business, software business, and then to be able to support that with renewable energy and an education system that drives a productive workforce for this next generation. We do that, we are the next Silicon Valley times 10.
I love it. Is there a question I haven't asked or a lasting thought you want to leave our listeners and our audience here today, our viewers?
Well, I would just say that I since we have us both on here at the same time, maybe life's short, right? At the end of the day, we're here, we do our best, we try to leave our contribution, and we fight with people to get that done, but ultimately we're all after the same thing. I believe here in Arizona, we all want a thriving place for our future generations. We want our kids to be able to afford to live here, and right now it's looking like they may have to live out of state to get their first home and so forth. So that's why it's so personal to me. I've been able to develop a relationship with my extended family right here in Arizona, transplanted to Arizona like a lot are, in a way that has allowed us to be successful in not only our business pursuits, but in our community efforts, and just people like you that we met along the way that are wonderful. And I tell you, the greatest thing as running for governor, is been able to meet these amazing Arizonans I've met that are all just truly amazing in their craft and their belief in the state, et cetera. And so my parting message would just be, everybody has a legacy. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has their relationship like they have. Like I have with my father, they have a different relationship maybe, but they have a story to tell with their families in Arizona. And I would tell you, your leadership matters. The things that we're dealing with today, democracy is fragile. The ability for us to govern ourselves and to be successful comes down to these families taking action and saying, you know what, I want to try something that's different this time and that's more powerful. And I think that this could be the guy to take us there, and make that bet. That's my message. That's my story. It's like, everybody, you build your own story in Arizona. Let me help take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think what I would say is this is a time for Arizonans to really think transformative change, and this isn't against anybody. This is for Arizona, and I think Hugh has a very specific vision and set of things that he can cause to happen, very focused, that will transform this state and make us the best state in the country. And if we don't do that, I think we run the probability of not having a very good future. And I don't want that for my grandchildren. I'm sure that they don't want that for theirs. But this is a chance, and it's a one-time shot.
It is. So if people want to learn more about Hugh Lytle, and you're running for governor, how do they find you? How do they contribute to your campaign? Where do they learn where you're going to be at your next campaign stop so they can greet you and shake your hand and talk to you?
Thanks, Bob, for that. Yeah, so, first of all, please follow me on HughLytle.com, HughLytle.com, and follow me on Hugh for Governor on any social media channel. I would tell you, we have on that website, you'll be able to see what my policy platforms is. We will continue to put out more material as I develop policy in the coming months of our campaign. You'll start to see me more on media. We're getting ready to do a campaign for, name recognition has been the challenge I've had, but we're getting ready to come out with our campaign on that. And, any public speaking or opportunities we have, go there. But I can tell you this, a lot of this has been self-funded, because at the end of the day, you got to prove viability. Well, we're standing, we're in there, and so
you had to get 45,000 signatures, right?
Yeah. No, I ended up only having to get 6,000, but to 2,000, but I got 6,000. But the goal is for us to be able to like any contribution is helpful, like even small dollar, whatever you can do if you believe in what I have to say. Please go to the website, donate, and volunteer and help us be successful.
Well, I can't thank you both. I mean, first of all, you guys are an American family, legacy, and really proving that, Ben, your upbringing, you talked about how you didn't have, and you created, you and your brother,
right?
And now you're looking at second generation and third generation. You guys are a great family, and really what American families really aspire to do and be. Right. So it's so great to know you both, and so great to have you here on Health Futures.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you, our listeners and our viewers, for at least being able to see and hear from the Lytles. And Hugh, I'm wishing you great success, and I'll be there rooting for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben.
Thank
you for being here.
Bob.
Thank you for being here on Health Futures. We'll be back next week. Thank you, guys.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, Call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com.